Hey guys, welcome to our weekly Friday video, and sometimes we have a bonus video on Tuesday, but today we're testing the AMD Phenom II X4 965 Black Edition. This is an AM3 processor with 4 cores running at 3.4 GHz. It launched in 2009 and it has a pretty high TDP of 125 watts. If you look at the Phenom II food chain, it's one of the higher end models, but there are faster versions like the 970 running at 3.5 GHz or the 975 and even the 980 which runs at 3.7 GHz. We will have a look at overclocking and see if we can match those clock speeds. The motherboard we're using today is a Gigabyte 880GM UD2H and it worked great. However, at first I noticed something really off. When I produce a video like this one, I kind of follow the same process, which is cleaning the motherboard a bit, reading up on the online documentation and seeing which CPUs are supported. I always flash the latest BIOS and my first test is usually Cinebench and checking the power consumption. Now the power meter showed 204 watts while running Cinebench and I knew that this is just way too high for the CPU. Now there is a 140 watt TDP version of this CPU, but I double checked and mine is definitely the 125 watt version, so something else is causing this high power draw. I then checked the CPU voltage with HW Info and it showed 1.472 volts, which is well above the 1.4 volts that this processor is rated for. So my suspicion was that the motherboard and the BIOS was overvolting this processor, maybe to give it a bit of a higher overclocking potential or something like that. I always use the optimized BIOS default, and in the BIOS section for the voltages, I changed the CPU voltage from auto to manual, and that did the trick. The voltage while running Cinebench is now 1.392 volts, and you can see an immediate reduction of power draw down to 178 watts. I wanted to see how far I could undervolt the CPU, and it was stable with just 1.264 volts, but crashed at 1.248 volts. So I settled for a BIOS setting of 1.3 volts and running Cinebench. That gives us a power consumption of only 157 watts. This is the setting I used for all the benchmarks and gameplay, and it was rock solid. I didn't encounter any issues. So yeah, if you do go for one of these CPUs, do check out the voltages, and with a few minor tweaks you can reduce the power consumption by around 50 watts like we've seen in our case. So that's a great outcome, but it does make me wonder how many people out there had a Gigabyte board with the settings on auto and experienced issues like overheating or other issues and blamed it on the CPU, when in fact the motherboard was excessively overvolting the processor. Here we have the power consumption graph again, and we can see the impact of the voltage tweaks. Under load, the E5450 with its 80 watt TDP is still the coolest running processor, and we will see soon how it actually compares in terms of performance. Let's take a closer look at the motherboard we're using today. We have 4 RAM slots, which is nice. So that means we can take it up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, PCI Express 16 and 1X and 2 PCI slots. We have 5 SATA 2 ports. They're in an unfortunate spot. Unfortunately, if you're using a beefy video card, then you can't plug in the SATA cables. I had to use angled connectors, and that means you can only use 2 of them. We also have legacy ports, RD and floppy, although the location of the floppy controller near the ATX power connector is also a little bit unfortunate. We have dual BIOS, so in case one BIOS chip fails, we have a nice backup. We have a ton of ports at the back. There are a total of 6 USB 2 ports. The yellow ones are not USB 3, they just support quick charging for your mobile phone. We've got a PS2 connector, VGA, DVI, HDMI, optical out. There's also Firewire and eSATA, gigabit LAN, and also our audio ports. In the most recent videos, I got a few comments about reapplying the thermal paste onto the chipset cooling, and yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. And these old boards, well, they do deserve a little bit of TLC, and I had no issues with temperatures. The VRMs also held up fine. All I did was use my finger test, and I'm sure that undervolting the processor helped as well. Next up, I wanted to tweak the RAM speeds. For this project, we got some interesting DDR3 memory provided by GearBest. What's interesting is that this is marketed as AMD only RAM and therefore has a lower price. You're looking at $35 for a 8GB 1600 MHz module. So for just $70, you can have a nice 16GB RAM kit. The BIOS defaults to 1600 MHz with 11, 11, 11, 28 timings. So to tweak the timings, I set the RAM speed down to 1333 MHz, which then has a result of faster RAM timings of 99924. And I took a screenshot of all the settings. I then went back into the BIOS, set the speed back up to 1600 MHz and manually entered the faster timings. In CPU set, I saw that the settings got applied and I then ran the Windows integrated RAM test and that completed without any issues. And I also had no problems with any of the benchmarks or games. Now you guys know I'm not that much into overclocking, but this is a Black Edition processor with an unlocked multiplier, so it's really straightforward. With a slight undervolt of 1.35 volts, it would go up to 3.6 gigahertz and pass Cinebench, so that's now at the level of the faster X4 975. At 3.7 gigahertz, that wasn't enough, I would get a blue screen, but raising the voltage to 1.4 made it pass Cinebench and match the fastest Phenom II X4, the 980. I also had a look at underclocking. The lowest bus speed is 200 MHz. You can turn off all the cores apart from one to turn this into a single core CPU, and the lowest multiplier is 5x. So if you want a single core running at 1 GHz for some retro projects, you can do that. Here we have all the components I used in the video. The Phenom II processor, the Gigabyte motherboard, 16GB of DDR3 RAM. We've got a Radeon RX 570, a 600 watt power supply, the AMD 125 watt thermal solution, a SSD and a hard drive. And I will have a look if I find any links on AliExpress or eBay for these parts, and I will put them down below in the video description. Let's have a quick look at performance. Cinebench R15, we're getting a score of 340, so that's just a little bit in front of the Core 2 Quad Q9650. And moving on to 3D Mark, we can see similar results. Basically, the Phenom X4 965 is really on the same level as a Core 2 Quad Q9650. So those two are really good comparisons. So looking at these results, the Phenom 2 running at 3.4 GHz matches up nicely with a Core 2 Quad that's clocked at 3 GHz. We're getting very similar results, and also in games that we will check out next, the machine also felt just like a Q9650 that we reviewed in past videos. The Phenom 2, however, does consume more power. Even with the voltage tweaks, the E5450 is the more efficient processor. We will talk about prices and value next, but now let's have a look at some games. I will put the name of the game and the graphics settings down below.
Don't look down.
Caroline, wherever you are, you do what you have to do to keep everyone alive till I get there.
To left 5, right 4 long, don't cut, and right 6, don't cut, 200, 200 over bumps, 100. Left 6, don't cut, and left 4 long, 250, 200 over bumps.
Who's there? Who was?
So, a griffin this close to the village? Strange.
My thoughts exactly. In the forest or the mountains, sure, but here? Near the main road.
Maybe it's the one.
Considerably.
I like the sound of that.
Resources are essential for crafting and upgrading your equipment. It appears, however, that we...
Good job. Attack system back online. Proceed to the LZ.
So what do I think of the Phenom II X4 965? Well, to answer this question, we have to look at current prices and also consider alternatives. I got my X4 965 from AliExpress for $33, and you can get AM3 motherboards from around $35 to $40. Now, if you compare this to socket LGA 775, prices are a little bit cheaper. You can get the E5450 for around $20 and a DDR3 LGA 775 board for even under $30. So the AMD platform is a little bit more expensive. However, you can get cheaper AMD DDR3 memory. So with a 16 gig RAM kit, the price difference is not that great anymore. We did, however, see, even with the processor voltage tweaking, that the Phenom 2 consumes more power compared to the Xeon E5450. You also have to factor in that you need a quite capable processor cooler that can handle 125 watts. For this video, I'm using what is basically the AMD Wraith cooler, which is made out of copper and has heat pipes. But otherwise, I really like AM3 as a platform. It worked great for this project, and after discovering that the motherboard was overvolting the CPU and applying a few tweaks, including tightening up the RAM timings, the performance in games was pretty decent. As always, don't expect the latest and greatest AAA games to run well on such a machine. The processor doesn't have the latest CPU instructions either, so there are games and programs that won't even run. But if you're like me and you like to pick up older games when they are on sale, then this processor is still going pretty strong. It's in that zone of being too young to be considered retro and too old to be considered modern. Talking about retro gaming, AM3 is fully compatible with Windows XP, and most motherboards have all the legacy interfaces like IDE and floppy connectors. So yeah, I think I covered everything, but as always, if you've got any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I will see you next week with our weekly Friday video, but do keep an eye out for Tuesday. Sometimes there is a bonus video. And that's it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Give it a like and click on that notification bell, and I shall see you soon with another one.